Welcome to listing your healthcare experience on your CV. Today we are going to be adding to the CV that you've already started and making it more robust to include your healthcare experience. So by now your curriculum vitae should include your contact information and education. Today we are going to start with how to add your clinical rotations to your CV. Based on your current experience, you will likely include your clinical rotations toward the top of your CV, but as you gain more experience, the section's one you will probably decide to move down or prioritize differently. One thing about CVs and resumes is that you have more freedom than you realize, so feel free to be creative. I'm not talking about adding drawings and making your CV crazy, but do make sound decisions about how you can best portray your experience. I usually go with two standards. Number one, is it professional? And number two, is it effective? If you feel good about those two things, your decision is probably pretty good. So, first decision, what do you want to label your clinical rotation experience as your section header? My favorite's probably just the obvious clinical rotations. But if you have something else you prefer, that's certainly your decision. It's part of the excitement of creating a CV. There are a lot of effective ways to portray your clinical rotations on a CV. Here are a few examples. And certainly consult with the CV samples you collected for your first assignment to see if they have formats that you like even better. With formatting, ease of reading quickly is pretty important. So consider what information you would really like to include and what format catches your eye the best and which is easiest to read. In this sample, there is room for a brief description of your experience. Maybe there is a skill or a special accomplishment you want to highlight. Again, if you have the job description for the position you are applying for, you can really cater this to fit your CV so that it matches what they want, and this is one place where you can do that. If you feel like your rotations were pretty generic, standard PA student rotations, you might decide to not include a description. Again, it depends on what you want the audience to know about you and your experience. Here's more examples. This was a different option using a different format with a different use of white space. And a couple more. So as you're looking at these examples, consider which look do you like best? Have you seen other formats that you like maybe even better than these examples? For your next upcoming assignment, you will have the opportunity to decide how to best portray your clinical experience by adding this section to your already existing CV. So most of you probably have some clinical or healthcare experience from your life before PA school. And I'd say that's obviously a relevant category to include on your CV. Again, first decide how you want to label it. Consider how you want that experience to be perceived. Something like healthcare experience or additional healthcare experience could be appropriate. Or maybe you want to even be more specific and say something like paramedic experience or pediatric work history. It's really your decision. And again, just remember, is it professional and effective? You could even separate your experience into different sections with appropriate headers if it portrays your experiences best. So how do you actually articulate your experiences on the CV? So first, brainstorm your accomplishments and the transferable skills for the position. Don't just write a summary of the generic job description because that's boring and it doesn't show who you are. So what did you do that you were proud of? What contributions did you make? What were you known for? Or what's also the most relevant information to the new role you're seeking? Also remember that CVs are concise. There's no need for extra words like the or including. Just get straight to the point. And don't use personal pronouns. You aren't writing in full sentences, so there's no reason to add extras like I or we or you. Do consider adding numbers. We call this quantifying. If it helps add to the picture of what you did, Managing a patient load of 35 patients per day sounds much different than just managed a daily patient load. So here's some samples. In this section, it's a good idea to do a brief summary of your experience because you're probably there for more than just 5 weeks. In a resume, we usually use bullet points. You can certainly try that in a CV, but it is most typical to just do a brief couple of sentences, or statements rather. If you want to stand out, really focus on the transferable skills and experiences that are most relevant to what you're applying for. And also consider highlighting your accomplishments, not just a list of what the job required of you. Again, stay brief. There's no need for full sentences. That also, again, means leave out I, we. So instead of, I worked with the team to treat 25 children per day, you can just say, collaborated with the team to treat 25 children per day. And it's often easiest to start your idea off with a strong action verb. Here are a few examples on this slide. Also notice the formatting examples of how you might consider describing your experiences. Here are some examples of describing your professional experiences. Notice the action verbs at the beginning of each idea. Also look for results, accomplishments, transferable skills, versus just a list of what the job required. Do you see any numbers? Now, numbers won't work for every idea you're trying to portray, but they can paint a nice picture when used appropriately. Your licensure information should probably go toward the top of your CV at this point in your career. Most important is obviously your PA license. Since you don't currently have one, let's say something like expected fall 2020, so you don't come across as being dishonest or portraying yourself as something that you're not. You should likely include what state you're licensed to practice in when you get to that point as well. There may be other licenses that are appropriate to include here too, but try to keep them relevant. They probably don't care that much about your real estate license, at least not at this point of the CV. Maybe you might decide to put it at the bottom or maybe under a separate category. What other licenses can you think of that might be relevant? Maybe you're an athletic trainer, an EMT, paramedic, CNA, medical assistant. Perhaps you would include your DEA license. If you choose, you can also decide to combine your licenses and certifications together on your CV under a section that is often titled Licenses and Certifications. But we're not going to do that today because we're going to talk about adding certifications on another date. Here's some more samples to consider. Again, choose something that you think is professional and effective. Try to make it your own. There's also an example here of how you might decide to combine your licenses and certifications into one category. Your assignment is to add your rotation history, at least as much as you know right now, and put it on your CV that you have already started. Next, add any previous healthcare experience that you may have already, and put on your professional licenses and submit it. Until next time, hopefully you're off to a great start on creating your CV.